Previously, on Proto Death Knight, I ended up interacting with another player, this time because he asked for help taking down an elite. This might actually be the first time in my entire World of Warcraft history where this happens so often. And strangely enough, I'm starting to enjoy it. I spent another talent point in improved Curse of Agony and I can finally show off my latest purchase, Twisted Saber, which means I finally switched to a faster swords. This purchase really opened my eyes and honestly taught me just how much time I'd wasted struggling with slow weapons. Mutanus the Devourer went down very quickly and dropped a ring that could have fit my build perfectly. Unfortunately, luck wasn't on my side. And just like that, my journey through Wailing Caverns came to an end. On one hand, it was successful. Dungeon runs always provide valuable experience. On the other hand, it felt a bit bitter because I walked away with absolutely nothing. At the time I recorded this gameplay, there was only 1 month left until the Burning Crusade pre-patch and I simply had much less time to play. On top of that, I could feel my motivation slowly fading, mainly because of how slow this build is when dealing with enemies while playing solo. Still, whether I make it in time or not, I want to push this character all the way to level 60 and see how it performs once the new expansion content arrives. Sure, I could just buy the $80 boost. After all, like I said, I don't have a lot of time to play. Blizzard's policy honestly disgusts me. And no matter how much I love World of Warcraft, decisions like this makes me feel bad, knowing that I'm still supporting them with my subscription. Anyone defending this just because they don't have time to play or because it was the same during the last TBC Classic, that kind of thinking belongs somewhere else, not in Classic, maybe in some gacha game, built around shortcuts and monetization. By that logic, I could just as easily say I never had time to raid because I didn't have a guild. So maybe Blizzard should sell something like Black Temple raid bundle with full loot included. Alright, enough complaining. Maybe I'm just getting old and this is simply what players expect now. After finishing a few quests involving the usual slaughter of gnolls and Dalaran mages, it was finally time for another dungeon, one where I actually cared about the loot, specifically Feline Mantle, Belt of Arugal, and most importantly, Robes of Arugal. These 3 items, especially the robes, would finally make my character look like a proper Dark Knight. I ended up in a group with 2 trolls who already had most, or even all, of these items. That meant there was at least a small chance I could get everything without having to spam this dungeon endlessly. At first, after checking my damage numbers, I honestly thought this build might not even work in a group content, but after a short while, it became clear it was holding up surprisingly well and wasn't falling behind the rest of the party. On top of that, Shadowfang Keep is such an atmospheric place that I actually started wondering whether I even wanted to rush these items and go back to struggling through solo leveling. The rotation itself was still boring and repetitive, mostly corruption and Curse of Agony. But at dungeon pace, it barely mattered. The gameplay felt smooth and enjoyable, and on larger packs, we could also rely on Rain of Fire, which dealt solid damage. After defeating Baron Silverlane, we had to push through packs of Worgen that were immune to my curses, which seriously limited my DPS. luckily there weren't too many of them. Next came Commander Springvale, who unsurprisingly dropped nothing for me, but that was fine. I knew exactly why I was here, and I knew when it would actually start to matter. The next boss was Odo, accompanied by two bats who, no matter what you do, always share a single brain cell with him and attack together. After seeing his drop, I briefly regretted not using staffs, because it actually looked really good. Then we reached the worst part of the dungeon. For some reason, there's a very real chance that every single mob in that room decides to aggro at once, even if in theory you did nothing wrong. That's exactly what happened here, and honestly, I'm still surprised we survived without losing anyone. Next on our path was the massive wolf, Fenris. Once he went down, we finally reached the part of the dungeon that actually mattered to me in terms of loot. Only two bosses remained, and both could drop items I wanted. From Nando's, Feline Mantle dropped, and I actually managed to win it. And then there was only one boss left in this iconic place, Archmage Arugal. A genuinely fun fight with constant teleports and the ability to temporarily turn players into Worgen. When he finally died, he dropped the item I wanted more than anything else, Robes of Arugal. And of course, they didn't end up in my hands, which meant only one thing. I still needed two items, and both of them drop only from the final boss. So this journey was far from over. Another run, and exactly the situation I was talking about happened again. Every single mob attacked us, and unfortunately we all went down. Despite that one stumble, we pushed through to the final boss and killed him without much trouble. This time, Belt of Arugal dropped, and to my surprise I actually won it. That was already 2 out of 3 items I wanted from this dungeon, and it only took me 2 runs, so honestly, things were moving pretty fast. Third run, and yes, Robes of Arugal within reach. Unfortunately, I didn't get them this time either. Run number 4, and yeah. At this point, I was already about an hour deep with nothing to show for it. To cool off a bit, I went out to finish my class quest. The journey was long and dangerous, and along the way I ran into another orc who unfortunately reminded me that I still hadn't gotten those damn robes. So I went back to my little hideout, killed some guards, a few mages, just did something else entirely. When I was a kid, I always believed that if you showed the computer or the game that you didn't care, it would reward you. Games installing faster, loot suddenly dropping, that kind of logic. And honestly, I was counting on that magic again. While I was waiting for another group, I learned how to summon a succubus who would now accompany me. I also knocked out a few side quests, killing lions, farmers, just random stuff. Eventually I went back in for run number 5 because I knew that Robes of Arugal are simply too good to ignore at this stage. And of course, not only did I die again, but the belt dropped again. So yeah, still a long grind ahead for a single item that I'd probably replace not long after in another dungeon. Run number 6, nothing. At this point I bought myself my own black robes just to show the game how angry I was. On top of that, I picked up a new weapon, because as you might not have noticed, we were now 4 levels ahead, sitting at level 26. I have bought this weapon earlier, planning for it to be the final piece of my Death Knight Acolyte look. Turns out it would instead help me earn the robes I actually wanted. It's reasonably fast and has a chance to cast a Shadow Bolt, dealing around 35 to 45 shadow damage. Even if it procs rarely, I don't care. It fits the character, it fits the concept. And honestly, these upgrades alone made me start landing in top 3 DPS much more often. At first, I thought it was just luck, but after a while I noticed it was happening almost every fight. Definitely a good purchase. Of course, that run also ended with the belt dropping again. Still, I have to admit, this was the most fun I'd had with this character so far. At some point I stopped caring about the ropes entirely. I just didn't care anymore. I fell in love with this dungeon and with how this character plays here. And I mean that genuinely. As terrible as this build feels during solo leveling, it feels incredible inside dungeons. Casting Rain of Fire, throwing out curses, dealing absurd melee damage for a caster. It genuinely felt like I was playing some unfinished forgotten class that never got proper melee abilities. Unfortunately, the game remained merciless. I think it was run number 9 when the ropes finally dropped. But not for me. Still, like they say, 3rd time's the charm, or 10th, or something like that. And despite dying again, the game finally took pity on me and decided that top DPS on the final boss was worth rewarding. Ropes of Arugal were mine. And that's where my journey through this dungeon finally comes to an end, as a fully fledged acolyte of forbidden magic and death. 5 levels gained, core items secured, ready for the next stage of the journey. What comes next, we'll find out next time. See you then.